Good morning. I'm Emily Kalkoffer, Director of Marketing at Wine Shipping. Welcome to the DTC Master Series, CRM Tactics to Sell More Wine. We're so glad you can join us. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our partners, Wise, Commerce 7, and Red Chirp, for sharing their expertise today. These sessions are about helping you connect with your customers more effectively, build stronger relationships, and grow sales through smarter use of data. Before we get started, here's a few quick housekeeping notes. So we're recording the sessions and Q&A, and we'll share along with the slides within a day. Please enter your questions in the questions section of this webinar tool. And if you can, please address your questions to the appropriate speakers. We'll answer questions during our Q&A section a little bit later. We're going to take a short 5-minute break in about an hour, around 10 a.m. Pacific time. So with that, let's get started. So first and foremost, I'm excited to introduce our first speaker, Liz Mercer, aka the guide on the side and partner at Wise, who will share why CRM is more than just a tool. It's a people-first mindset that creates a culture of connection and consistent wine sales. So without further ado, let's take it away, Liz.
All right, well, let's jump right in. And I want to open with a story. There was a young newlywed couple, and the young man was watching his wife get ready to host her first big Greek family dinner. She was in charge for cooking for her family for the first time. She gets everything all ready and she cuts off a couple of lamb chops and sets those aside. When asked why by her husband, she said, "Well, this is the way my mom taught me." The young guy asks his new mother in law, which is pretty brave in and of itself, "Why do you cut a couple of the chops off?" It was the way that her mom, or the young new bride's yaya, taught her how to do it. Soon, the nice Greek grandma, Yaya, arrives. Now, still feeling puzzled, he asks his new grandmother in law, while all the men in the family were wishing him well, on questioning Yaya why she did something the way that she did it. And the answer had them all laughing. Yaya replied, "Well, the butcher always sent over a rack of lamb that was too big for my oven, so I had to cut a couple of the chops off." That lesson had been passed down from generation to generation, from year to year, and no one ever questioned why. They just did it the way that Yaya did it. Even though their modern ovens were much larger and can fit the full rack of lamb that Yaya's oven of 50 years ago could not fit. So, my question to you today: why are we doing things the inherited way? Or are we taking advantage of new modern tools? This requires a mindset change as well as a technology change. As Karen mentioned, my name is Liz Mercer, and I am so honored to be here today. I'm one of the 3 partners at WISE, which stands for Wine Industry Sales Education. We were started in 2008, launching our first classes shortly thereafter. And now we do a number of services for the wine industry, including mystery shopping, leadership cabinets, custom coaching, and consulting. I'm excited to present here. No pressure being the first presenter. So let's continue on with our conversation. One of our favorite quotes at WISE is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. The rest of that quote from Peter Drucker, the 20th century economist, is that it eats operational excellence for lunch and everything else for dinner. CRM is not just the technology that we finally have, thanks to Andrew and C7 and Jenny and Red Chirp and Wine Shipping and all the advances that they've made. But for far longer, CRM has been a mindset. Now all wineries can execute well on this. It reminds me of our co-founder, Leslie Berglund. Her mother worked at I Magnin back in the days, a fancy department store in San Francisco. CRM was her way of life. It was how she sold products that came into the department store. She knew who needed what shoes to go with what dress, a hat for a special occasion, a purse to complete the outfit. When new product came in, she got out her old fancy Rolodex, flipped through it, and called the right person with the right offer at the right time. She was not in the transaction based business. She was in the relationship business. Isn't that a lot like what we do? So, a way that we look at this at Wise, and if you've spent any amount of time with Wise, you've seen this before. This is our buyer's continuum. And what this says is the longer a guest is with us, and by the way, that does not mean the longer they are camping out at a table, but their tenure, their lifetime that they're with us, the higher they raise in value with us. Everybody starts out down here as a prospect, which has their own set of unique needs, psychological needs in order to purchase, like risk reduction, which is the very act of wine tasting. And we can measure our success along the way. How much traffic did we get? And how much of that traffic did we convert to purchase, to club, to data capture, also known as the WISE triple score? We can look at email open rates or text open rates and click through rates and website bounces. We can look at offer popularity and things like customer acquisition cost to really understand how much it costs us to get that guest into our tasting room and then into our database for further marketing and sales. Everybody moves up that scale, hopefully, to a first time buyer. And they have one psychological need. They're looking for recognition. So, are we reaching out to them 60, 90 days post visit after we know that their shipment has been delivered and we know that they had a great delivery experience? We're reaching out for our first time buyers program. Hey, we missed you at the winery, or it's been a while, or how did that rosé treat you? Here's something we have. Take a look at this offer, tailored just to their needs, which is what repeat buyers are really looking for. Are we listening to what they're telling us? Do we truly understand? And are we able to get the right offer to the right guest at the right time? We do this through RFM, recency, frequency, and monetary value analysis, looking to make sure that we've got their needs in mind, and that's what's driving our programming. And finally, hopefully, we get people up to loyal fans who their psychological need is all around respect and rewards. Do we know who they are when they're coming into the tasting room? Do we know who they are when they interact with us online? We can measure our success with them by their tenure, how long they've been with us, and things like their lifetime value. So let's look at this in real life. This winery waives their tasting fees with a 2 bottle purchase. So somebody came in, bought 2 bottles of wine, the tasting fee was waived. And to the winery, they think this is a win. They've done what they've supposed to have done. They sold some wine. But from a Wise perspective, I'm going to be very, very frank. This is actually a fail. And here's why. We are hoping that this guest is going to come back to us and will move themselves up the buyer's continuum. We know that hope is not a strategy, it's not something we can take to the bank. So let's see what this looks like from a Wise win perspective. This is a Wise win. We were able to capture incredibly rich information in that 60-minute experience we had with the guest. We know their name, we know their birth date, we know where they're coming from, we know their email address, when they were visiting us, we know some of their preferences that we were able to capture. And we know, perhaps most importantly, where they're staying so we can go find more people just like them or how they heard about us. This is a winery win. Now we can move this guest up that buyer's continuum methodically. So we can go from a prospect to a first time buyer to perhaps a repeat buyer. So I mentioned first time buyer programs are really popular and working for wineries. And here's an example of it. This particular winery, they looked online or they saw that this guest was following them on their social channels. They clicked on the C7 Insight button to understand what this guest might appreciate. And they reached out with a special offer, and not just any offer, but one that was targeted to their needs. So in this particular instance, they called with a 6 pack cab offer. That's what this guy likes. And they sold him some wine. Worth noting here that American Express tells us the typical consumer is worth 10x their first transaction with us. So if this guy's first transaction is $90, just imagine the runway that we have with this guest. So this winery continues on thinking about CRM as a mindset across the organization. They email with a specific offer for a club tailored to this guest's needs, and he joins that particular club. Now we're honing in on that 10x the first transaction. This winery is also thinking about things like corporate gifting. And so they call with a special offer for corporate gifting. And now we have far exceeded that 10x level. This can go on for years if we're working people up the buyer's continuum. So it's our choice. Do we have a database that looks like this with lots of rich, robust, actionable information? Or do we have a database that looks like this? Because as I said, hope is not a strategy. It's not a business plan. It's not something we can take to the bank. CRM, however, is a strategy and it is a mindset that permeates or should permeate the entire organization. We have the tools in place with this modern technology stack, but are we using it? There are other cultural issues that happen, though. It's not just a say it and so it is sort of thing. This takes a tremendous amount of delicate movements internally to ensure we are on the same page across the organization. And it kind of begs the question, are we siloed? There are storm clouds ahead in our industry. We can see them. Luckily, today we have many decision makers present, and you all need to hear this. Perhaps you've hired or developed some subject matter experts, and we need those subject matter experts. But we need to take the modern approach to what's really important to our business. Silos can create revenue wars. Is it club versus tasting room versus outbound hospitality, where different incentive compensation levels will naturally compete? People want to hit their goals, they want to be successful. We need to be really, really careful when we're thinking through silos and breaking down those silos that we're customer centric and encouraging the guest to act in the channel that they want to, not where incentive compensation may lie. So we need to really think through, how do we as an organization do this? One of the things we have to be really wary of is building a culture of data capture. And thinking through this, there are a lot of things to think about here. There's many ways to capture data in our business through modern technology. And I'm excited, Jenny today is going to talk a little bit about something that at Wise we're very excited about to make this even easier. So let's think about this. We have many ways to create data capture. Do we have QR codes? Do we have paper and pen forms? Do we verbally ask for people and also obtain informed consent along the way? Why is this so important? Our guests want to hear from us. They have sought us out of the hundreds of wineries maybe in our region to come and visit us. They have said, I want a business relationship with you. So let's honor that. Let's get their information into our system and keep that conversation going. We need to squash the monkey chatter that's on our shoulders, saying people don't really want to keep in touch. People don't want to be bothered. They don't want to give you their information. We need to squash that monkey that sits on our shoulder. In honor of Commerce 7, I put a Canadian spelling here. We need to model our own behaviors when it comes to data capture. Are we throughout the entire organization focused on this? And of course, we do this through training and coaching and open book management, sharing how many guests we have coming into our business and how many of them are joining our mailing list. We want to incentivize good behavior early and often. And of course, most important, we want to manage the myths of how this data is used across our businesses. And we want to be very, very open with how we share data and how we use data. Wise has had the honor and the privilege of doing over, 6,000 mystery shops. It's one of the services that we offer. And we track over 80 data points through those mystery shopping. Do we hear a good brand story? Does our server have passion and enthusiasm and service heart? And we get into some professional selling skills along the way as well that our mystery shoppers experience when they go into tasting rooms. And one of those, or three of those, are called the WISE triple score. So the blue line here at the top, we've been tracking this number since 2012, is are we asking for the order? So are our mystery shoppers asked to purchase wine in the tasting room? And the good news is we're actually pretty good at this. In 2024, industry wide, from all the way from British Columbia down to Temecula and out to the East Coast, our mystery shoppers were asked to purchase wine 86% of the time. So we're doing a pretty solid job in the tasting room of asking to our guests to purchase wine. The orange line, not going to lie, this one keeps me awake at night. This is how often our mystery shoppers are asked to join the wine club, warmly invited to join the wine club. Our mystery shoppers, who are all hospitality, wine industry professionals, know what to look for, and they're asked to join wine club just 32% of the time. Imagine if we were asking everybody to join our wine club, how different that number would look. And then the gray line down at the bottom, the one that truly, truly causes me gray hair and keeps me awake at night. How often are our mystery shoppers asked to keep in touch with the wineries that they visit? How often are they asked beyond setting up the reservation or can I email you your receipt? But in a meaningful, let's keep this conversation going. I've had such a great conversation with you today, sort of way. We'd love to invite you back for events. We'd love to let you know when the next release comes out. That happens a whopping 18% of the time. And to be fair, going all the way back to 2019, just the last kind of normal year, I mean, it's just as dismal now as it was then. But imagine if we were asking everybody to keep in touch, not just the person who's transacting with us, but the other four people at the table who they came in with. Imagine how different our outreach hospitality programs would look. So, CRM, as I mentioned, besides the technology, is a mindset that's part of our culture. And how do we ensure that this happens smoothly? First of all, we have to hire right. We have to make sure that when we're hiring, we're not just hiring for wine educators, but that we're hiring for people who want to continue relationships with our guests. We need to set clear expectations with our team members. We need to let them know that we need to be capturing contact data, selling wine, and enrolling everybody into the wine club. As business leaders, we need to embrace open book management and share the impact that their hard work makes on our business. That when they are asking people to join the wine club, when they are asking people to keep in touch, it's fueling those other programs. Of course, we need to celebrate successes early and often. We need to invite problem solving. How do we capture contact data? How do we continue to market to our repeat visitors? How can we get people back in the tasting room? And of course, we need to coach, coach, and coach again. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. What we do in DTC is at the end out of a very, very long relay race. It started with the person when the shotgun went off who was out in the vineyard, who are not seen by guests. They work in extremely hot conditions, they work in extremely cold conditions out in the vineyard. They work where things want to bite them and sting them and hurt them. They pass that baton off to our production team, who again are often never seen by the guest, also working in extreme temperature conditions, and again surrounded by things that want to hurt them, like confined spaces and gases and barrel stacking and things like, oh, I don't know, forklifts. Uh, they then pass that baton off after all their hard work to our back office teams, which again are never seen by the guest, the person who makes sure that we have beautiful packaging that's TTB and compliant approved and arrived on time and ensured that bottling happens and we have gorgeous bottles of wine to sell and gorgeous collateral and beautiful tasting rooms that are created and beautiful websites. And finally, that baton gets passed off to our DTC team. And all we have to do is just get it across the finish line. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As DTC leaders, it is up to us to ensure that everybody embraces the CRM mindset and discipline and leverages all these incredible technology tools that we have because we represent so many people than just what the guest sees. So, with that, I invite you to keep in touch. Here's a QR code that links directly to my calendar. Let's keep the conversation going. And furthermore, I invite you to follow us at WISE, wineindustrysalesEducation.com, and keep in touch. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it right back over. You'll be joined by my colleague Jen later for a Q&A. And we thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Liz. In just a moment here, we're going to hear from Mike Fishman, VP of Sales at Commerce 7, on how wineries are leveraging CRM to transform sales and strengthen customer relationships. So welcome, Mike, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Emily. Really glad to be here. Before I dive into my topic, I'm calling it Luxury 2.0, and it's all about using personalization to communicate luxury in online sales. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Most of you probably haven't met me, and myself is one of my favorite topics. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and more importantly, who I'm not. Who I'm not is a veteran of the wine industry. I've never worked a harvest. I've never worked in a tasting room. Most of my career has been spent in restaurants and restaurant technology. But even though after saying that, you're probably thinking, well, why am I here listening to this guy? I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing now. So right now I'm the VP of Sales here at Commerce 7, and that gives me a pretty unprecedented access to a lot of data, some of which I'll share today, that I think you should be interested in. But secondly, I want you to take this presentation from the perspective that I'm also your prospective customer. I am interested in wine. I love tasting good wine. I like the stories behind it. I like to learn about it. And I'm part of the demographic that I think you guys are going after. So in saying that, I should let you know, when I go to a restaurant and I order a bottle of wine, I have this sort of weird pride whenever I select a bottle. I'm scouring through the list, looking at price points and regions, looking up reviews on my phone because really I don't know a whole lot. Trying to find the perfect bottle for just that one special occasion, even if it's just a regular night out. But the thing that brings me crashing down to earth, that makes me feel like just a regular customer ordering a regular bottle of wine, is the server at the restaurant, who brings the wine, takes the order, brings the wine to the table, pours it, and then just walks away. No fanfare, no applause, no acknowledgement of what was obviously a perfect choice for whatever meal that we're having. Now, truth be told, I am no sommelier. Everybody on this call knows more about wine than I probably do. But I know what I like, and I know why I like it. And that's important because wine is personal. But too often when we sell wine, either in the tasting room or online, we sell it like it's just another roll of paper towels. And that's a problem because it's not. Wine is not a utility or a commodity. It's a luxury. And luxury is at its best when it's catering to one single person. So our goal in DTC should really be to ask ourselves, how do we make all of our customers feel like they're the only customer? So today I want to walk through a few things. First of all, I want to talk about wine as a luxury. I think that we all know that wine is luxurious, but there's some interesting stats that can back that up. Second, we'll talk a little bit about the power of personalization and why it can make a meaningful impact. And finally, I'll give you some ideas to implement some practical ways that you can actually use personalization on your own websites. So first, let's establish wine as a luxury. I think you guys know wine drinkers already treat their bottles like their prized possessions. And it doesn't matter what price point that's at, because luxury is in the eye of the beholder. What is luxurious to someone at a $30 price point is the same level of luxury to somebody who can afford to buy a $300 bottle of wine. People treat bottles of wine like watches or handbags, not just as purchases, but as statements. They're kind of like me. They like telling the story of how they found it, any factoids behind it. They like to impress people with their wine choices. And the spending behavior reflects that mindset. The core, about 7%, over the past 5 years, wine prices have tracked almost identically with other luxury goods like cars, jewelry, or designer clothing, growing at about 7% per year. And this correlation shows the price sensitivity of consumers and how it relates to other luxury items in their lives. Simply put, consumers put wine in the same echelon as a Rolls Royce, a diamond ring, or a pair of Gucci shoes. But too often, their experience when they're buying doesn't match that mindset. When you're spending $50 to $100, when half of wine drinkers will spend between $50 and $100, and 5% of wine drinkers will spend over $1,000 on a bottle, we can't afford not to match that mindset. We can't afford to be that server that I mentioned earlier, just nodding and pouring the wine apathetically. We have to do a better job of meeting our customers where they're at and giving them an experience that's reflective of themselves. So if wine is a luxury, then personalization is the hospitality that makes it unforgettable. When a winery remembers your name when you show up in the tasting room and they know what you like to drink, when you're seen as a person and not a transaction, that feeling has a lot of power. So much so that customers are 6 times more likely to buy when the experience feels personable, and they're 78% more likely to make that all-important second purchase. The brands that get this right don't just create better experiences, they create a better business. And those results add up very quickly. I asked one of my colleagues, Dan DeRusha, in preparation for this call to run some numbers for me. And not only is what we found impactful, but it is immediate. Online orders for wineries who introduce personalization rose 9.5% in just 2 months compared to the previous 2 months where their websites were static. And revenue from those orders where someone had been personalized to rose 10.3% in the same time period. So the fact that we know this obviously means that wineries all over the world are just scrambling to inject as much personalization as humanly possible. I'm kidding. It's only about 20% of wineries that are taking advantage of this. What happens is someone comes in your tasting room and they walk away saying, I like this wine, or I didn't like that wine. Then maybe they get an email from you, which honestly, they'll probably delete without reading. But if you're lucky enough to have them read it and click on a link to go to your website, it's just going to show them the same static website as everybody else. And that's a shame, because everybody here puts so much work into the product that you're selling to your customers, but you're not giving yourself enough opportunity to showcase it. We have so much access to data and we're letting it fall flat. So let's get back to the original question. How can we make all of our customers feel like they're the only customer? I want to start in the tasting room because that's where human connection is built and it's sort of the easiest to deliver on. And to illustrate that, I want to borrow a story from the restaurant world. So when you get to know me a little bit, you'll know that one of my biggest passions in life is going out to restaurants. I'm kind of one of those foodie type people. And one night, me and a group of friends were going to this really fancy tasting menu restaurant, got to the table, everything was set immaculately. Forks on the left, knives and wine glasses on the right, napkins were folded all fancily. There was the weird fork on the table. Nobody really knows what it's for. Like, everything was just presented perfectly. We had our first course. The staff came to clear it off the table, and then they reset the table for us. And after they reset the table, my friend gave me one of those little elbow nudges, points down at his table setting, and everything had been set backwards. All of the forks were on the right, knives and spoons were on the left. And we were all kind of taken aback, like, we're paying all this money for this meal. How could this possibly happen? The server overheard us speaking, came over to the table very calmly, and told us, if you'd like, we can reset that for you. But during the first course, we noticed that you were left-handed. So we wanted to get that set properly for you. And out of everything that was delicious that we tasted during the meal, that was the one point that really blew us away. Not only that, my friend returned to the restaurant a couple months later with his wife. And when he sat down at the table, it was already set for a lefty. How did they do that? Very simply, they logged it in their CRM. They made a note so that they could make his experience feel personal every single time. It really is the small details that create luxury and allow all of our guests to feel like they're the only guest. So when the next time you meet with your team, I would suggest having a meeting about those small details. Ask your frontline team, what are some things that we notice that we can take advantage of and make these and create these moments for our customers? Not the big details like I talked about before, what they like to drink or how many times they've been in. That should be par for the course. But what are the small details that your team can take advantage of? And don't just stop with one meeting. Make it a part of your process. Make it a part of your steps of service, and make it a part of the culture that your team follows every single day. Now, let's imagine you have somebody who came into your tasting room. They just had this amazing experience. You noticed they were left-handed. In this day and age, the next interaction you're going to get with them is probably going to be an email. But the problem is, a lot of the emails that we send nowadays lack the personalization that we deliver in the tasting room. They might read a little something like this. Dear valued customer, thank you for your purchase with insert winery name here. We hope you enjoy your purchase. Please see your purchase details below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out about your purchase. The thing that I love when I see these emails is how easy it is to fix. It's one of the first things at Commerce 7 that we like to point out as an opportunity to create a meaningful and personal interaction with your customers. I want to illustrate that by talking a little bit about another company outside the wine industry, Spotify. Spotify has no real reason from a technology or offering standpoint to be as popular as they are. You can stream music on Apple Music or YouTube or Amazon, but what Spotify does really well is they take a personal approach to their listeners. They take the music geek that works in the record store and they put him or her in your inbox. So whether it's that annual wrap up that everybody posts on social media or a recommendation for a song based on a song that you've listened to 100 times, they want the experience when you log into Spotify to be as personal as possible. So let's take a Spotify approach and let's look at an email that's sent with a little bit more personalization. Dear Mike, I was so excited to see you just ordered the 2024 Pinot Noir. It's a different style than I usually make, but I think you're going to love it. When I first tried it, I got a little bit of watermelon on the nose, which you don't see that often. I'm curious to hear your thoughts after you open it up. If you like it, I've been experimenting with a Gamay that we offer to our club members that you might want to check out. Your shipping information is below, but I've included my direct line and email address here in case anything comes up that I can help with. Hope to hear from you soon. Andrew, the winemaker. Now, there's a couple things here that make this email really effective. Number one, it is specific. It doesn't matter if I bought a case of everything they had or just that one bottle of Pinot Noir. Andrew wants to talk about that one bottle of Pinot Noir. Secondly, this feels more authentic. Number one, it's written in a tone that feels more conversational. But number two, it's signed by Andrew. A lot of the times we see emails that are signed by entire teams. There's not an email in the world that's sent by gathering your entire team in your office so that everybody can approve it. And your customer knows that, right? So when you send it from your whole team, I know you're trying to make it feel warm and fuzzy and family oriented, but your customers see through that. Third, Andrew's inviting me behind the scenes. He's saying, this is what I'm tasting when I drink the wine. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. He's breaking that fourth wall. And whether we like it or not, your customers having a personal relationship with a winemaker is the type of relationship that they want to brag about. Finally, let's consider the upsell at the end. It's casual, it's conversational, and it's just a little bit exclusive. It's an upsell without a hard sell. It's a recommendation, not a marketing tactic. If you like this, we have a Gamay that's in the club. Very easy to get people excited that way. Now, let's talk a little bit about website personalization. They've received this great email from you. There's a link to the website, and they're on their couch watching TV, scrolling through their emails, and they read through this email and they're intrigued. So they decide to click on the picture, go to your website, and I'm sure that they see a beautiful website, no doubt. But one of our design partners, Michael Bourne, always says, no matter how well you've built and optimized this website, static messaging can't serve all customers. And he's right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution that can satisfy every single customer that's coming to your website. But in order to personalize it, there's two different categories, two different ways we talk about it. Number one is content personalization, what they see in relationship to your brand. The other is experience personalization. This is how we personalize based on the buying process that exists on your website. So first, let's talk about content personalization. Okay. A first-time buyer lands on your homepage. The banner that they see should look different than the one a club member sees. Maybe it invites them to join a club because they can save money on their purchase. On the other side, a club member should not see the banner that a first-time buyer sees. You wouldn't sell water to someone who was drowning, so why would you sell a club to someone who's already a member? Instead, put up a banner that reinforces the things that they get from being in your club. Maybe they get access to exclusive wines. Maybe they get discounts. Remember, exclusivity is a pillar of luxury, and we should be communicating that over and over again. Finally, I want you to think about a really important group of customers, and those are your return guests. They're not club members, they're not first-time buyers, but they're somewhere in the middle. And when you think about them, I want you to consider the difference between welcome and welcome back. One word completely changes the tone of your site. Welcome means we're glad to see you just like we're glad to see everybody. Welcome back means we're glad to see you singularly. Content personalization is really all about extending the same hospitality that you would in your tasting room to people visiting you on your website. So now what you need to figure out is how many different ways do you want to approach your customers and what does that look like on your website? I want to give you an example, a case study really, of a winery called Linmar Estates. Linmar Estates put up 19 different personalization blocks. Things like badges for club members, it's time to restock on your favorites, recommendations for you based on your order history, are you or are you not a mailing list member, and another about 15 or so personalizations. They made these small improvements and they saw a 66% order increase after implementing in those 2 months, just like I was talking about before. Now, disclaimer, 19 personalization blocks is a lot. That's some very advanced work that you would have to do, you or your web designer would have to do. What I would suggest is start small and grow into it. Start with maybe 4 different personalization blocks. One's for guests who have never bought from you before, people who have bought once, those repeat purchasers that we were talking about, and your club members. If you can get those 4 established on your website, you'll be light years ahead of everybody else. So the last thing we want to talk about is the experience personalization, because it doesn't just happen through content, it happens through the experience itself. Let's think about a normal online shopping cart. It's got the items you've added, the number of those items you're buying, the prices, all the prerequisites, and nothing more. But why would we waste an opportunity to build value at the point of purchase? Somebody is about to buy something. There's a reason why grocery stores keep gum and tabloids at the checkout. It's so they don't waste an opportunity when they have your attention. Now, we do this in a couple ways. First way with Commerce 7 is called cart carrots. Cart carrots are, for all intents and purposes, messages that appear in the cart to incentivize people to buy more. My advice here is put yourself in your customer's shoes. What's going to get you motivated to spend a little bit more money on this website? Is it free shipping? Is it discounts? It could be anything. How you tailor this to a specific customer in one of those groups becomes vitally important. So maybe it is a guest, someone who's never bought from you before. You could send them a free wine key if they spend X amount of dollars. Now that customer has your logo in their home for years to come. Or maybe you could do a cart carrot that recommends a wine based on what they're already buying in their cart. We talked about the Pinot Noir during the email and then recommending a Gamay. Same concept. Be that winemaker who's sending that personal email to that person's inbox. But more than price or value, I'd encourage you to be creative. Maybe you don't need somebody to, maybe you don't need a cart carrot where somebody just spends more to get more. Maybe it's just a heartfelt thank you from a small family winery that encourages people to come back and purchase again. Or maybe you'll promise to donate X amount of dollars to a charity for every bottle that they buy this month of a certain type of wine. Again, we want these upsells to feel thoughtful and more like a suggestion than a sales pitch. Finally, I want to make sure that you guys remember to reinforce the value that you're delivering to your customers. If someone receives a discount, don't just show it on their receipt. Reiterate it over and over and over again on the shop page, in the shopping cart, in the follow-up email that you send. And by the way, don't just show your customers what the price, what their actual price is after the discount. Show them the price before they receive the discount. Keep reiterating that they are receiving a lot of value from you based on whatever this experience personalization has. These little touches honestly don't require a huge resource. They just require you to step into your customer's shoes and be honest about what would make you feel good about buying from your winery. It's being honest about what turns a transactional interaction into a more personal experience, because that's what your customers expect. They expect an experience that matches your product. And whether it's in the tasting room, in their inbox, or on your website, exceeding those expectations in those small, thoughtful ways is going to give you a real edge over a winery that still treats luxury like a nice to have. It's not a nice to have. It is a must have. So when you get back to your offices, sit down with your teams and ask one simple question: how can we make all of our customers feel like they're the only customer? Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Mike. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Jenny Gilbert, co-founder of RedChirp, who will show how smarter messaging can directly drive more sales. So let's go ahead and pass the baton over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everyone. I know I am standing between you and your bathroom break, so I will try to be very timely, and around the top of the hour or a few minutes after, we'll have that 5-minute health break before we continue. I have had the sincere pleasure of giving this presentation with these folks around the country in several different locations. And the first one, when I was driving back to the airport, I just kept remembering this experience and conversation I'd had several years ago, long before RedChirp, when I used to make technology for independent retailers that sell expensive stuff for your house, like appliances. I was at this trade event. I was talking to a retailer, and this woman had zero interest in how I might be able to help them. And she interrupted me, said, "Darling, darling, darling, I don't sell lollipops. I sell caviar," in this incredibly theatrical voice. What she actually sells is toilets. Very expensive toilets, but that's what she sold. And I kept thinking of that conversation and wishing I could go back in time, bottle some of this woman's overconfidence, and bring it back to share with you all instead. Because you do sell caviar. You sell some of the most loved, sought after, limited products. Your customers love your wine and they love you. And when we love each other, we communicate. So for the rest of my section, we are going to talk about some of the most effective ways that DTC teams are communicating with their customers who love their wine. Probably not surprising if you've met me before, we're going to talk about text messaging because consumers say overwhelmingly that they want to text with the businesses that they love. But what people say and what they actually do in real life is not always a one-to-one match. So it's very interesting that in this case it is. We can tell that by looking at RedChirp's web chat feature, which lets consumers ask a winery to text them. In just the last year, consumers use this one little feature to ask a winery to text them over 250,000 times. And of course, not every winery uses RedChirp, and even wineries who use RedChirp, not all of them use web chat. So I am sure that it's true, not every single customer wants to text with you. But based on both what they say and what they do, a very large percentage, really too big to ignore, do want to communicate with you through that medium. Some good news. It is millennials that want to text with you, but it is not just millennials. Here are some very different sized wineries, and you can look at how similar the average age of consumer who uses web chat is, and also how big the range is. This is a communication medium that all of your customers are interested in, so you can get benefit right away, and it can also help you appeal to a younger demographic if that's one of your goals. More good news. Text messaging is super efficient because 98% of all text messages are read. It is not every day that consumers' preferences overlap with what's easy and efficient for us to do. So in this case, we should take the win and run with it. And even better news, consumers buy a lot of wine from text messages. In our second annual analysis, we looked at 11,000 text promotional campaigns that were sent by almost 500 different wineries to over 13 million recipients. And those promotions generated almost $139 million of sales. And very specifically, these were outside of wine club sales. If you want to learn more about that study, there's a QR code, and what's neat there is we did pull out some best practice learning that you can apply to your own campaigns to help those performances improve. But unfortunately, not every single text message works. Not all of them convert exactly the same. You're probably even getting tired of hearing this morning. It matters a lot how personalized they are. If you're still not a believer after hearing Liz and Mike, here's another source. McKinsey & Company did a study and found that when companies really excel at personalization in their marketing generates 40% more revenue. Compelling carrot, but one little problem. It turns out we have a real disconnect between our ideal and reality here. Almost all companies, 82% of us, think we do an excellent job of personalization. But when you actually go talk to the consumers that we're marketing to, we learn that's not actually true. Only 16% of consumers agree with us. So for this next section, I want to show you a lot of concrete examples that you can use as templates. What does really good personalization look like specifically in your text message communications? Our first example is from the wonderful Liam with Frank Family. Now, Frank Family is a large, well-respected brand. They have huge lists of consumers and customers that they can contact. This text campaign about re-releasing a library wine could have been sent to thousands of consumers, but Liam very wisely only sent it to 200 people. Those were 200 people he was really confident would want to hear about the re-release of that wine. And look how effective. Just the small number of people and this text sold over $11,000 of wine. Doesn't have to be that small a scale. Here's an example of a low SKU promotion, which is just a home run. If you haven't done that yet, you should absolutely do it. At Farniente, they let people know that one of their beloved Pinots was going to be, got to the end of their supply, and they didn't send this to everybody. They sent it to people who had bought a significant amount of that particular Pinot. They sent it to about 2,600 people, and that one text message in 6 days sold over $80,000 worth of wine. Hesperson. In May of this year, they didn't do one giant text campaign that went to everyone. In just 3 days, they ran 4 different text campaigns that were super hyper segmented. They went to between 150 and 450 people. And those campaigns, although they were very micro-targeted, still generated a lot of revenue, almost $18,000 worth of wine sales. Now, I've shown you a couple promotional examples. It's not just promotions. So here is an example of how Bricoleur reaches out in a really personalized manner to their club members when they're getting down to the wire. It's your last chance to customize your upcoming club purchase. It would be easy for them to send this to all club members. It would even kind of make sense. It is their last chance if you want to make more changes. But instead, they took the time to only send it to the members who had not already customized after sending several email communications. So they just sent it to those folks they hadn't been able to reach yet, and this one additional effort was able to get 200-ish more people to customize their club shipment. And as we know from some amazing Commerce 7 data, when you can get your members to customize their club, you sell more wine and they stay in your membership longer. Here's an example of a very operational, informational kind of message. Hey, you bought wine from us already. It's sitting here. We need you to come pick it up. I'm amazed, by the way, that wineries struggle with this, but I know all of you do. You could just say it's time and we're going to ship it if you don't get it by this date, or you could add extra personalization. This winery, Bricoleur, again, not only lets them know the details, but even includes, if you don't pick it up by this date, we're going to ship it to this specific address. Let us know if that's not the right place or that timing isn't good for you. This one text message about something they obviously have already been struggling to get people's attention about had 60% of the recipients physically reply, text them back. Now, all of these examples are great starting points, but I imagine some of you may be sitting there, I don't have a marketing team of 25 people. How do I do this personalization? To actually execute this personalization, if you don't have gigantic teams, requires technology that is built to do that and is industry specific, because so many of these personalizations are specific to what you sell. So just a few examples. Let's say you want to send a birthday text message, right? You want to automate that. Great. One of the awesome things in the wine industry is we have to get people's birthdays. So you have that information, but I hear it's not always right. So it's important to have technology that does things like, hey, if I see this person's over 100 years old, I'm not going to send it. Or you can click here, Redshirt will show you the most popular birth dates you have in your system and how many people have that birth date. So you can say, oh, yep, I want to ignore this one because it happens to be the one our team puts in when they don't know somebody's birth date. If you want to do something like text just the members who haven't yet personalized, you can do that with Excel and segmentation and all kinds of things, or hopefully there's some nice tie-ins like we worked with Commerce 7 earlier this year to make it trivially easy to pull in members of a specific upcoming club shipment that haven't yet customized. It's especially helpful when you're trying to decide who you should text and maybe who you shouldn't text. So I get asked all the time, how often should I text my customers? But unfortunately, there's not one answer that fits all. Really good technology that helps you personalize is able to look at each person individually. So for example, hopefully other programs can do this too, but in Redshirt's AI optimization, you can add the people you want to text to, and then Redshirt will estimate how much we think this person will like this text right now. You can see we gave Marivel here a score of 74 because we know Marivel purchased 48 days ago, and that's where she falls on the curve of how likely someone is to buy wine based on the number of days since they last bought non-club wine from you. We know it's been a while since you sent a promotional text to this particular person. She's on a great place of that curve. We look at past behavior. Marivel has bought wine from previous text campaigns you've shown her. She's actually in the 14th percentile of how much. And specific to the wine industry, Marivel's an active club member right now, which also increases her likelihood of buying from this campaign. We know, we have so much data that we know unequivocally that this works. But there is a gating feature here. There's a gating fact. You can't do this stuff if you don't have people's phone numbers and consent. So if there's one thing that I can impress upon you today is that every business listening should be thinking about and executing a strategy, not just hoping, like Liz said, executing a strategy. How do I get more phone numbers, more email, and more consent to market to my customers? Some of my favorite ways. Web chat, which we mentioned earlier, it's an amazing customer service tool. It's a surprise revenue generator, but it's also a great way to organically and consistently gather phone numbers and consent, and most wineries ask for email address there as well. Every time someone fills it out, you're getting express written consent and that information so you can continue to email and text market to these folks. You can also, every winery here should make sure that you have opt-in forms that you can feature in all of your marketing emails and standalone email campaigns on your social media, at all the events that you're doing. And you can even let people opt in to get your texts by texting you a fun word like cheers 25. And by the way, a lot of people don't know this, you can even have a QR code that when scanned, automatically opens a text message to the right phone number with that keyword. And so all the customer has to do is scan the QR code and then click send. Most wineries have some kind of pop-up on their website asking people to sign up for your email list. Even better, replace that with one that does both, that collects email and text messaging consent. If you haven't seen it yet, if you're not sure how to do that, and you do happen to be a Redshirper, our new Lightbox feature is out of beta testing. We would love everyone to set it up. It doesn't cost any extra, and it's just a great way to continuously grow your email and your text messaging lists. And a sneak peek, I heard Liz kind of mention it because we're so excited that we're starting a beta test within a week or so with Wise together with our new feature called Guest Check-in. I talk to wineries every day who consistently tell me we have 3 to 4 people in most tastings, but we usually only get contact information for the one person who made the reservation, and consent's probably not getting it at all. So this new guest check-in feature is designed to give you a new tool that makes it easy to adjust your process a little bit. Maybe have a QR code, maybe have an iPad, and as you welcome people in for your tastings, whether they're a reservation or a walk-in, you ask each person in the group to check in. I would maybe say something like, we're going to be pouring you just a little bit of alcohol today, so let's get your birth date, get you all checked in, get that out of the way. It makes total sense, especially because you're going to be serving alcohol. It's quick and easy, and I hope we'll see in our beta test, I hope to see that this can exponentially increase the amount of contact information and consent you're gathering. Jennifer and Liz, I am all in, and we got to get that bottom line of your graph way up. So if you are not chirping yet, you're not sending any text messages, you are welcome to use either of those QR codes. The get in line one just gathers your information so we can start the process. Book a demo if you want instead to meet with someone individually, see what it's going to look like and ask all your questions. We're very happy to do that. What I want to leave you with is a reminder that everyone listening today, I assume, is selling wine. You sell caviar, not toilets. Your customers want to hear from you. So take a deep breath, put your big kid pants on, and text people about it.
Thanks so much, Jenny. That's great. You did a great job on timing as well. So let's take a 5-minute break. We'll kick things off at 7 past the hour. And so I look forward to seeing all of you in a moment where we'll hear from Wine Shipping. Welcome back, everybody. I had to get the sun out of my eyes there. So thanks again, Jenny, for a great presentation, Liz and Mike as well. Audience, please don't forget to enter your questions in the questions section. We'll be doing a Q&A after our last session. So last but not least, I'd love to introduce Paul Smolarkowitz, Chief Innovation and Experience Officer at Wine Shipping, who will explore how operational excellence enables wineries to deliver personalized experiences. So take it away, Paul.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thanks everyone for taking the time to spend with us today. For starters, let's try to break down this title of my presentation. Sounds pretty intense. What the heck is operational excellence? And what does it have to do with CRM and selling more wine? Well, I think we've heard great tactics and mindset from Liz, from Jenny, from Mike, and a lot of that has been focused on personalization and making the customer feel like your only customer to drive more sales. What I want to talk about is a little bit different, but closely related. You know, the experience we create for our customers doesn't end at taking the sale. In fact, the experience that we're really selling, that caviar, doesn't actually occur truly until the customer enjoys the wine that you've made for them, that you've helped them buy, ideally with friends or on a special occasion. But that experience can't happen if the customer doesn't receive the wine. So delivery, and thus logistics and the operational excellence I speak of, is also very important to really taking care of our customers. So before we get into some of the strategies, tools, and tactics we found to be really effective at wine shipping, I want to tell you guys a story. And in some ways, it's actually the same story you heard about an hour ago from Liz about Grandma Yaya and her pot roast, but I tell it a little bit differently. And for those of you that many of you may know Wine Shipping. Wine Shipping is a brand that's been around in the wine industry for nearly 30 years. Many of you may also know me. I've also been around the wine industry off and on for about 25 years, peddling this technology or that. And so, you know, today we're focused on talking about things that are new. But why should you listen to me or Wine Shipping for that matter about something new? You know, we're not new. We've been around a long time. Well, here's the thing, you know, I've been a software engineer or engineered my whole life. When I was young in the, you know, in the 80s, I was into computers, I was into peregrine falcons, and I was into the space shuttle. And so, you know, at school, when I had a chance to do a report, it was more often than not about the space shuttle, or if my teacher said like, look, Paul, you can't do another report about the space shuttle, I defaulted to peregrine falcons. But it was interesting, you know, in the 80s, the space shuttle was a modern marvel, an engineering marvel. And what I learned fairly, you know, rarely, and it caught my attention, was even when the shuttle was brand new, it was built with compromises, meaning the space shuttle, as amazing as it was actually not very comfortable for the astronauts. The engineers would have preferred to make it wider and more spacious. And it was really interesting that like why they couldn't. It wasn't because they didn't know how to make a wider space shuttle. It wasn't that like the materials available to them didn't allow it. Interestingly enough, the weight of the space or the size of the space shuttle was limited by the size of those booster rockets that were needed to get the space shuttle up into space. And the size of those booster rockets were not limited by, you know, material science or what engineers were able to build. They were actually limited by logistics. Like those booster rockets were produced in Utah and had to be transported to, you know, where the space shuttle took off from. And the way to transport those booster rockets were on railroad tracks. And the interesting thing is the width or the gauge of railroad tracks in the US are 4 feet 8.5 inches. Really odd number, right? Like, well, why the heck is that? Well, the reason was because the tools originally used to build the railroads in the US came from Great Britain. And in Great Britain, the railroads were built you know, years and years earlier. And in order to build the railways in Great Britain through, you know, land ownership and easements, they had to use the old roads. And the old roads dated back to Imperial Roman times, and the roads had ruts in them from Roman chariots. And the ruts were 4 feet and 8.5 inches apart. And guess why that was the width of those roads? Because Roman chariots were pulled by 2 horses, and 4 feet 8.5 inches was just enough to fit 2 horses' asses side by side. So, you know, I share this story not to say that, look, everything that's old or everything that's traditional is bad. Quite the contrary. You know, there's 20 and 30-year-old wines that are excellent. But some of the things that were a great idea and a great solution thousands or hundreds or 10 or 5 years ago are not necessarily the best solution available to us today. And here's the thing that's really important. We as wineries were actually pioneers of loyalty programs, especially in e-commerce. I mean, I remember when I built my first website for a winery in 1999 or 2000. They literally asked me like, "Hey, do you know what this e-commerce thing is?" And I fibbed a little bit and said, "Yeah, of course." Luckily, no one knew, so like we were able to figure it out together. But the thing is, you know, what worked back then, just like those ancient roads, aren't necessarily the best thing that works that works today. And the real difference is that our customers' expectations, whether they're millennial or of any age, their expectations are different today than they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. You know, why is that? Well, because the world has changed. And also, the reality is even though we were pioneers of loyalty programs, our customers, ourselves included, we buy and have a lot of other stuff that isn't wine delivered to our homes. Like some of us have frozen lobsters, or you know, we're part of loyalty programs for our shavers. Obviously not, you know, not me. But like, you know, we've been tuned to expect something different. You know, and let me tell you another story. My daughter is now 17 years old, but about 10 years ago, I was at my parents' house in my dad's basement over the holidays, and we found like my old or his old VHS tapes and a VCR, and I found The Princess Bride, and I'm like, "Oh, Riley, you gotta see this. This was my favorite movie." And my dad wasn't kind. He didn't rewind. I put the movie in. It was halfway through, and it had been years since I had used a VHS thing. And so instead of stopping and rewinding, I hit rewind. And for those of you listening old enough to remember how VHS players work, you know what happened. Like the screen went all squirrely. And guess what my, you know, at the time 6-year-old daughter did? She broke down in tears and ran away, and she thinks that basement is haunted. And to this day, she refuses to watch The Princess Bride with me. But here's the thing, like not all of us have like that strong of a reaction to an inconvenient delivery experience, but many of us do because we've been trained over the years to expect better. Now, the good news is there are solutions. And I promise I'm going to get into personalization. But before I talk about personalization is basically rooted in and the CRM mentality we've been talking about is rooted in knowing our customer and then using that knowledge to serve the customer and make them feel special. Like Mike said, every customer should feel like your only customer. But guess what? There's some universal or near universal truths about our modern customers as a group that we also shouldn't ignore. One, 100%, nearly all of our customers, there's probably some weird edge case, but nearly 100% of our customers like to receive the wine that they ordered. 100% of our customers we find like to be informed about what's going on with their orders. 100% of our customers are frustrated by missed deliveries when they get that nasty note on their door. Some freak out about it, more than others, but none of them love it. And 100% want their wine to arrive in mint condition. They don't want it damaged. They don't want it lost. And we'll get more into this, but our data, and probably yours, reinforces that very few of our customers, or very few of the times are our customers actually in a hurry. And we'll see why that's important here in a moment. Now there's more. You know, we've heard from Liz, we've heard from Mike, we've heard from Jenny on the importance of, when we're making the sale, catering to our customers' individual preferences. And yes, that's incredibly important, but it actually complicates the work of creating that amazing delivery experience too. Because now we're giving our customers tailored offers to their preferences. That means every box in a club or every box in a release all of a sudden is different. It's not the same 6 bottles of wine times 100 or times 5,000. Each box all of a sudden now has personalized contents, and that's a lot harder to get 100% right than when all the boxes are the same. Also, gifting is really important, and gifting is all about creating a personalized experience, not just for one, but for 2 people. Gifting is one way of including customized or personalized messaging inside the box, but there's others. You know, many of you do a like tasting notes or a release description that you include in the box. And that's one thing, again, when all the wines in the box are predetermined and the same. But what if you offer personalization? How do you get that messaging to match what's actually in the box? And then there's also an opportunity through, you know, good CRM data to include small delights with that delivery that cost you almost nothing, but have a profound impact on the experience and the luxury that the customer feels. An example of this might be like, hey, if you know one of your customers is a dog lover because they have a dog lover tag, what does it take to include a dog biscuit in the package? My local FedEx driver, Alvin, like literally leaves a dog biscuit for my dog Cat on the package, and she now goes like chasing every delivery truck that she sees in our neighborhood. And I know she's a dog, but like, hey, we customers love that stuff too. We love it. And here's the thing, it doesn't end at the physical contents of the package. That magical luxury experience, that feeling you get that, hey, these people really know me, this brand believes I'm their most important customer. There's also opportunity in how the delivery actually occurs. And you know, here's a few like key points. One is carrier preference. You know, our data shows that roughly 92% of your customers don't care really whether the brown truck or the purple truck shows up. But about 5% of your customers will freak out if the wrong color truck shows up for whatever reason. Some of those reasons are very logical, like, hey, I live at the end of a long dirt road, and for whatever reason, one carrier doesn't get here reliably and the other does. Some reasons are much more emotional and powerful, like, hey, that some guy in a purple truck was mean to my dog and I never want to see that truck on my driveway again. But like, those are really important things to, you know, to get right. Timing is also really important. Like, too often I see that we decide, again, maybe because in ancient Roman times or sooner, it was the best day, that we like decide to ship on Monday because we think it's best. But we haven't actually asked our customer, is that best? And that does vary, you know, day to day. It depends on, you know, is the customer working from home? Is the customer having the delivery at a commercial address? There's a lot of factors. Also, we tend to sometimes prioritize speed, much like Grandma Yaya's family, not remembering why we're doing that. We sometimes overspend on 2-day air, thinking we're doing something good, and And yet we're forgetting that oftentimes we're using 2-day air as a way to protect the wine, not because the customer is in a hurry. And there's a big opportunity not only to save money, but actually improve the customer experience by focusing more on tailoring to what the customer needs on an individual level than just by default saying, okay, put it on an airplane. The final kind of piece of the puzzle is delivery location. Many of our customers, in fact, we show that almost every customer likes having the choice, and 60% of customers prefer to have the wine delivered somewhere near their home where they can pick it up on their schedule than to having it delivered to their door. So these are just some of the examples where if we think different and we really put the modern customer first, we can create an amazing customer experience that results not only in growing sales because your hard-won customers buy from you over and over again, but they are also much more likely to rave to their friends when they share the wine that you delivered to them for dinner about not only how amazing your wine is, but how convenient and amazing the delivery experience is. And here's the thing. Doing all these things I described is possible, and it's possible without increasing costs. It's oftentimes possible through the reduction of cost if you happen to be relying a lot on air today in particular. But it's not a game of perfect. The reality is these packages we send out into the world travel in the real world. There's trucks, there's planes, there's snowstorms, there's traffic jams. No matter how perfectly we do it, there's going to be exceptions. And here's the thing. Here's the last piece of the puzzle. And Jenny talked about this too. But communication, timely, specific, branded, personalized communication is critical to the customer experience. What you see on the screen here is like a real world example, and we've got literally tens of thousands of these because part of the communication that we use and we advise is to ask customers for feedback and use that feedback to proactively reach out and to learn and refine processes. But we literally have tens of thousands of examples where we sent a package, it encountered a snowstorm or a broken down truck or got lost at a carrier sort facility for 3 days. Yet we kept the customer informed. And when they received that package, they give us 5 stars, delivered on time. This was awesome. It's not about speed. It's about managing the customer's expectations, and it's about taking care of their experience. So, in summary, in our experience, the keys to success are really let's make sure we extend personalization and everything we know about the customer and our customer focused all the way to the package and the delivery experience. Let's revisit, how are we thinking about scheduling? Are we doing it the way we've always done it? Are we doing it based on what we think is best? Or are we actually using data and asking for customers' preference and tailoring our schedule to that information? Are we creating unnecessary anxiety for our customers by, without asking, deciding we're not going to ship you wine in the summer? There's a much better way. In fact, I know there's a Q&A, but I'll spoiler one of your questions. If there's one thing you can do with logistics that will increase your sales, and is offer year-round shipping. Maybe do something as crazy as offer a summertime club. We can show you exactly how to do it safely. Next, as I've discussed, lean into giving customers preference on where they're going to pick up their package. 9 out of 10 customers have a Walgreens or a FedEx counter within 3 miles of their home. And there are, technologies available and logistics solution that make that reliable delivery to those locations and communication to the customer highly scalable. It doesn't have to be brain damage to execute. And then again, if you're looking for 2 things that you must be doing, keep the customer informed. Changes happen, surprises shouldn't. Branded, timely, specific, and multimedia communication, because not everyone opens their email, is a must. Thank you all very much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Paul. All right, as Paul mentioned, now is your chance to ask questions of any of today's speakers. So I do see a few questions now, but please feel free to, as you enter your questions, direct to the speaker, whether it's Jennifer from Wise, Mike from Commerce7, Jenny from Redshirt, or Paul from Wine Shipping. Please feel free to direct your questions to our speakers today. So I'll go ahead and kick us off here. Got a few questions to start for Mike. So Mike, everything you're discussing sounds relevant. We're a very small team, so I wanted to ask, do you have an in-house tech person or consultant who could work directly with us to implement what you're suggesting?
Great question. So Commerce7 does have a support team that can help you program some of this stuff within the Commerce7 platform. However, you are going to need your own web designer to actually implement it on your website. So the personalizations get built in Commerce7 and then they're pushed out to your website. You'll need a web designer or somebody on your team that knows how to take that code and paste it into the right part of the page.
Thanks, Mike. Another question for you here. Are those C7 personalization features available to all C7 customers or just certain tiers, website hosts, etc.? I'm curious how accessible this is to wineries without developer support.
So I think we kind of touched on developer support a little bit in the last question, but I do want to let everybody know C7 does not gatekeep any features. So whether you are a basic, pro, experience, or enterprise customer, you have access to the full suite of features that Commerce7 offers, and that includes some of these personalization techniques.
Thanks, Mike. Seems like another question for you.
Wow.
Is there a list of usable C7 variables somewhere?
A list of usable C7 variables. If those exist, they would be in our developer docs. I'm sorry, designer docs that are available on the Commerce7 website. I would check out those docs. If you just go to commerce7.com, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you should be able to find our designer docs.
Let's not have Mike be Mr. Popular today. I'm looking forward to seeing some additional questions for our panelists today. It looks like while we're waiting for questions, does anybody have any parting thoughts or comments about any of the presentations you've seen today?
I wanted to selfishly take a moment of the Q&A because I messed up and skipped some slides by accident, and I missed one of the most important ones that then Powell went back and mentioned. So I believe, Emily, you're going to send out everyone a copy of our slides. So that will be in there, although I just missed it in my presentation. Sorry about that. But one of the other most powerful personalizations you can do is when you're texting people about your shipments, as Powell mentioned. don't just rely on the carriers sending those messages because they're not very personalized. And you'll see in my presentation an example of they don't always tell you who's shipping the wine, that the expected delivery date has changed, who to reach out to or how to reach out if you have a problem or need help redirecting your package. And so that one additional personalization I forgot to mention has a huge impact. Emily actually and Karen, we worked together on analyzing some data about that and found it actually decreases returns 24% and damages by 74%. So Emily and Powell, my apologies, I forgot that slide and everyone who is listening.
Yeah, no problem. And, just to pile on to that, a couple years ago, I worked with both FedEx and UPS national carriers because when we first really started rolling out what we call our premium tracking notifications, the carriers were pretty skeptical on, well, we already do that. But I said, well, yeah, you do, but like, what are your open rates? And, they shared with me that UPS and FedEx branded messaging has open rates less than 2%. That means 98% of the time, the customer's not seeing them. That's not communication. The difference, and you might ask, well, why? Well, ask yourself as a consumer, how eager are you searching your inbox for UPS and FedEx messages? Most consumers, we get so many different things delivered, ranging from dog biscuits to toilet paper to our luxury wine. And we don't really care about those messages about our dog biscuits. Yeah, leave them on the porch. We do care about the messages about our wine, but you can't tell when the messages are coming branded as FedEx or UPS. You also couldn't tell if the messages came branded as wine shipping or red chirp. Neither of us do that. We are here to promote your brand, your customer experience. We as a brand are invisible when it comes to the consumer. And that's really the secret sauce. It's subtle, but it's important subtle.
Well, I was going to ask you, you were talking about summer shipping. What percentage of your clients are actually doing that? And are they seeing success with that? I'm assuming they are. I mean, we drink wine all year round. I would want people to be able to get it all year round. I was just curious if you knew that off the top of your head, just to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, roughly 15 to 20% of our clients now have really embraced offering worry-free or anxiety-free year-round shipping solutions for their customers. And actually, it's been amazing. I mean, those customers, that cohort of customers have, and I'm sorry if my data is a little bit off here, but I think in aggregate, those customers have seen a 25% growth in sales. I don't know if that's in dollars or package volume, but it was sort of a little bit surprising at how powerful that one change was. But what our clients have found and what we've realized is, hey, if you are deciding you're not going to ship during the summer without asking your customers, you're kind of hurting your sales twice. One, you're not getting that sale in the summer because the customer is likely still drinking wine, they're just not buying it from you. And two, you're now holding their club or whatever such that you send it to them in September or October, and guess what? Now they're fully stocked for the holidays.
Great point. Yes, love it.
Right here. We've got another question. Could you tell me more about tagging and how it flows from Commerce 7 through fulfillment? So I think maybe that's a question between Mike and Paul.
I'm happy to take a stab at it, and Mike, you can pile on. I mean, traditionally, order data would flow through from a platform like Commerce 7 through Ship Compliant or another compliance solution, and that's great, and many wineries still do it that way. But it is also somewhat limited because the Ship Compliant schema is one of those things that was great 15 years ago, great 10 years ago. But as technology has marched on, the Ship Compliant schema remains focused on compliance. So additional things, additional properties that you can capture as tags and as custom fields in Commerce 7 may or may not be part of that compliance schema. So things like tags normally do flow through, but the tactic we've used is, we've worked very closely with Commerce 7 as a partner, and we have an app that connects directly to Commerce 7. It still respects compliance checks, whether that's being done through Ship Compliant or Avalara or Vino Shipper or Drinks Assure or whatever platform. We're agnostic in that regard. But it is critically important that we can capture every nuance that is in the Commerce 7 CRM, because some of those things, yeah, you do want to translate into, hey, when that's there, put a dog biscuit in the box.
Couldn't have said that better myself, Paul. The only thing that I want to add, I just want to go back to what I was talking about in my presentation about small details versus large ones. You can create these custom tags in Commerce 7, whether they originate in the tasting room, in the admin panel, wherever. Try to figure out what those small details are and create a tag for it. Create a dynamic tag for it so that you don't have to manually go in and punch it. You can nail down the parameters of being able to identify a customer a specific way, one that'll be important to them. It'll just be more powerful for you as it trickles into the shipping process.
I would love to hear from the whole group if, like, okay, we have the example of dog lover pack a dog biscuit. What are some like super creative personalizations that you've seen like that, just to kind of get people's creative juices flowing?
Well, it's a simple one. One that I love is just as simple when you know that a package is a gift. Don't send the same tracking page, the same tracking messages as when it's not a gift. Meaning, look, it's on the one hand amazing to get a gift, right? I mean, who doesn't love to get a gift of wine from someone? But it's even scarier if you don't know that the wine is coming and you get a nasty note on your door saying, hey, we need your signature. Like, whenever that happens to me, guess where my crazy mind goes is like, oh my gosh, what taxes did I forget to pay? What law did I unintentionally break? Or is my wife finally come to her senses and she's leaving me? I'm being served papers. Now, that's a really simple toggle. Is this shipment a gift? And if it is, like, segment how you message it.
I'll pile on the gifts. If you do a lot of corporate gifting and you send a lot of text messages from Redshirt about those deliveries, I would highly encourage you to take advantage of, you can go into those delivery messages and you can exclude certain phone numbers that you don't want to get the text updates about the delivery. So if you were working with someone at a company and their phone number is on 50 corporate orders, please exclude them from getting the text messages about those orders so they don't get 50 times 4 messages for each one of those packages. Small detail, big impact.
Thanks, Jenny. So about getting customer data, collecting it in the tasting room. Is there a quick and easy way to collect it without typing it all in, given that the staff are busy, selling wine and doing other things? So what's the easiest and most effective way to do that? And I don't know, I'll call on Jennifer first.
Fair enough. If you make it part of housekeeping and do it somewhat early so that the team has the time to collect the information, it's easier for faster checkout. But we don't want to do it too soon because it'll be icky if you're trying to get their information without giving them a reason why. Like if they don't know if they like you, if they don't know that they like the wines, if we do it too soon without a good reason why, it might throw it off. So making sure that if you're doing it part of housekeeping, like Jenny had said, you're going to taste a lot of fabulous wines and, your brain is not going to be able to keep all that information. Like, let's create a profile for you so we can keep track of the ones that you really like, giving them a reason why. I think the other thing that is helpful to know is that if you only have one way of collecting contact data, you only have one way to win. You only have one way to succeed. So I highly recommend having more than one way of collecting contact data. It can be QR codes. It can be a little form that they fill out. It can be an iPad. It could be whatever. But asking your team, because they're the ones doing it, what works for them and having multiple ways for them to do it. I also think I probably could go on for 4 hours about collecting contact data, but there's also some of it is monkey chatter in their head that, they've got all these other things to do. It's, they don't see it as important. So for them to understand why we're asking them to do that, why collecting contact data is so important. And the reality is our guests want to hear from us. When we're in the wine industry, sometimes we're in our bubble and we think, oh, I wouldn't want to give my email or my phone number to like a winery. I get so much wine, I don't need it. But we're in the industry. Our guests want to hear from us and want the information. So we need to treat them that way and make sure our teams really understand that that's what's important. It's not about us, it's about them. So making it accessible in many different ways, giving time during the experience so that it's not rushed at the end, and making sure that they understand that bigger picture.
I'll add on there. So we're about to have more data about this in a few weeks, which will be exciting to share. But some of my hypotheses that we're going to be testing, I think that wineries will have really good luck if they just fold this into an expected compliance step. Like when you go into a bar, you show your ID. So you are serving alcohol. And I think that you can get a lot of participation in providing that information just by reminding people that you need to collect their birth date and there's some other information on the form. If your staff is busy checking in, you can ask customers to participate in that process. You can hand them the iPad. You can have it ready when they're checking in. You can have QR codes. And then I wanted to add on to Jennifer's excellent point about, giving people a reason to do this. You also, don't be afraid to give something of value in return for people sharing that information. It is valuable and people like to be appreciated and their value recognized. So something like an extra pour that you probably would have done anyway in the tasting or something like that. Or any kind of exchange like that is something that you can explore and experiment with and see what gets traction and what doesn't.
Thanks, Jenny and Jennifer. All right, so this is the last question I see, but please feel free to add additional questions if you got them. Is there a way to add an option to select for customers to select their local pickup locations in Commerce 7? And are there any suggestions on how we can encourage our members or people to tell us about their addresses so we can suggest a hold location?
So there is no hard-coded way to do that right now in Commerce 7. The best way to do it is just with we have a text box or a notes field that you would be able to enter that information into.
If no one minds me projecting a little bit about the The next thing that we're developing now that once we get guest check-in into beta testing is a automated confirmation text that you can set to go out when somebody places an order, and you can control like maybe that just goes to those that are shipped, for example. And it says, thank you for your order, and it asks people to please confirm their order details. And that is a link that takes them to where the first version 1 will be, this is the name, your email address, your telephone number, your billing address, and your shipping address. That's version 1. And then they're asked to confirm that all those things are correct. I could easily see an extension we'd love to work with Wine Shipping on, of maybe adding something there that would allow people to choose their nearest hold location. I thought we kind of spitballed about that a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can expand on that. And Mike, one of the things that's amazing about Commerce 7 is the vibrant partner community and lots of different apps. So no one can expect you to know all of the apps, but I happen to know of an app called Via Delivery that does work with the Commerce 7 checkout that does allow a customer to be made aware of nearby locations. Now, the potential gotcha is, I know that Via Delivery, that app works really well with Commerce 7 when Wine Shipping is doing the fulfillment. The thing with carrier locations is there is some complexity on how those labels are printed. But if you happen to be running Commerce 7 and using Wine Shipping, Via Delivery is something worth exploring. And it doesn't actually cost extra as long as you're working with all three. And I know this is an area of additional development. We also at Wine Shipping have available something we call a never home list. I wanted to call it the shit list, but I wasn't allowed to. But it's actually a report that can show you, hey, of your repeat customers or your club member, who is actually never home. And one of the really cool ways our technology works is if we receive an address that we know is associated with a Napa Auto Parts, which we know is a UPS access point, or a Walgreens location, which we know is a FedEx point, we'll get it to that location, including ignoring hey, this order came to us requesting UPS, but it's going to a FedEx place. We know that's not going to work. So there are actually inside of Commerce 7 a number of different ways to employ this, and we've had a lot of clients with tremendous success. I mean, as much as 40% of their shipments are going to delivery locations. So, if you need more specific help, reach out to us. We're happy to help.
It's a great point. Thanks, Paul.
Well, I don't see any additional questions, so I just want to say thank you, panelists here today, for sharing your wisdom and expertise with the audience. And we'll be sending the recording